Hello and welcome to my hypertrophy lifting series where I record every single set and rep of my workout as I possibly can. This is the end of week 4, so week 4, day 6 of my MyoMax training program. You guys can get it down below for $10 if you want to, have the document for yourselves. But full disclosure, you do not need to purchase the document just because I record everything and it's all online. And even if I don't get to something, then I tell you guys about it. So if you do really want to try out my program, then you can do it completely free as long as you're following along. But if you like the document, it is offered for $10. This whole program and this whole series as a whole really is to just make me the best lifter and athlete possible, but also to be able to share the insights and everything that I learned along the way and that I already know with you guys as well. So I kind of think of it as a two-way street where we're becoming stronger and getting bigger and just becoming the best version of ourselves that we possibly can over the course of this series, really. Anyway, today is a accessory day. And what I mean by that is I'm really focusing on shoulders and arms and just little muscle groups like that, stuff that's pretty much already hit on all the other days, but that I just want to emphasize a little bit more because I think that they can handle the volume. And I think that, if a muscle group can handle the volume, then why not train it extra, because after all, if you're not training a muscle group as frequently as you can, then you may just be leaving some time out there where you're already fully recovered that you could be spent growing additional, or not additional muscle, but enlarging the muscle fibers that you already have, because that's how hypertrophy works. I'm starting with the seated dumbbell shoulder press today. I'm sticking to the same weight as last time, and if you've been following along, you know that I did 70 pounds for 8 for all 3 sets last week. And that was quite challenging. So I'm just gonna stick to it until it becomes easier. Let's get into the first set already. So I'm gonna try and hit 9 or more today. Ooh. Okay. So that was definitely a very challenging set, but I did end up achieving more than 8. And whenever you can increase some sort of training volume, ideally it's either, or any sort of training stimulus for that matter, whether it be just increasing the amount of reps that you're doing or increasing the total amount of weight that you're doing. Those are 2 great ways of progressively overloading. Of course, those aren't the only 2 methods, but they're the most easily trackable. And that's why I prefer to enhance those training variables over other ones. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to get 9 on the second set as well. However, that doesn't mean that all is lost. Just because you manage to progressively overload on one set doesn't mean that you have to do it on every single set. What matters is the total amount of work that you did is increased in some regard or in some way from week to week. So since I got 3 sets of 8 is 70 pounds last week. And this week, let's say that I get the first set is 9 reps, the second set is 8 reps, and then the third set is 8 reps. Well, I still increased by 1 repetition for that whole exercise, which still counts in some regard for progressive overload. It's still a step in the right direction. And that's all you really need to be keeping in mind, is you want to do little baby steps in the right direction of where you want to go in order to achieve the progress and, you know, the physique and all that you want. So don't think that it has to be like 0 or 100, you know. It can be like 10%. It doesn't have to be, oh, I increased a rep or 2 on every single set of the whole workout or the whole exercise, or I increased 10 pounds and kept the reps the same, or even increased that too. It doesn't have to be large jumps all the time. Of course, the large jumps are way more fun and awesome and stuff, but you know, that's just unrealistic to have that sort of expectation, in my opinion. A vastly underappreciated training variable, in my opinion, is specificity. People do not talk about specificity enough, but it really is the difference between like getting really good and really strong at a lift and ultimately increasing the mechanical tension and thus gains versus not. Like if you are training at one lift and you just swap it out like every 2 weeks or something like that, or change it up in some way, in my opinion, that's way too frequently. And specificity is where you are sticking to one lift for a long enough period of time where you get the most that you can out of it. So it's like, let's say that I'm doing these dumbbell shoulder presses. By training in the dumbbell shoulder presses in a certain way, in a certain plane, doing the same form every time, my body, my central nervous system, my muscular system, everything is going to slowly adapt to that and conform around that lift. And then I'm just going to become stronger and stronger and more efficient at it, because after all, the human organism is very adaptable, and whatever you throw at it, it's going to work with that and ultimately become better at it, you know? So the more I do this lift, the stronger I'll get, the more efficient I'll get, the better I'll get at it. And that's really what you want. You want to be getting stronger and increasing and getting better at a lift as frequently and as much as you possibly can. So if I were to swap it out every week or 2, then that's not giving my body enough time to really lock onto something and improve at it. Just something to think about. Don't change up your workouts too much. Of course, you need some variation, but you don't need too much. There is a fine line there. There's a certain threshold that you don't want to cross, like a certain balance that you want to strike. All right, hell yeah. You got 9 again there, so that's another win. Definitely better than my hypothesized progression. So ideally, next up, I'd be doing some of the incline dumbbell curls. And the reason for that is just because the way I like to order my exercises is both by like antagonizing muscle groups, so muscle groups that at least ideally don't have anything to do with each other. And secondly, in terms of how much effort they use, how much effort is required to perform them. However, for whatever reason, it's a Saturday and the gym is so freaking busy, and I don't know why. So anyway, sometimes you gotta improvise a little bit. And while I could have just done incline bicep curls on that bench that I was just on, I didn't want to lose the opportunity to get the cable machine. So sometimes I think that it's helpful to have the flexibility and know how to kind of improvise on the spot, especially when you come into a pickle like this. So anyway, I'm gonna be moving on to the next exercise, which is the bilateral tricep extension, the cable version, and then the unilateral lateral raises. And if you guys aren't doing some sort of lateral raise, I would definitely recommend doing so. Just because I feel like the side delt isn't hit quite as much as the front delt and the rear delt. And the reason for that is because whenever you're doing a sort of pressing exercise, and the more vertical or up that you get, the more you're going to be hitting the deltoids. But whenever you're doing a press of any sort, you're going to be inherently using the front delt just because of the biomechanics of the chest and how the front delt is a secondary mover in that exercise. And then whenever you're doing a row, since you're bringing your arm like back like this, you're going to be using the rear delt to some degree. Of course, it depends on the line of pull. The higher up your elbows, the more rear delt you're going to be getting. Lower, the more lat and stuff, and the less rear delt, but you're still going to be getting to some degree. But the side delt isn't really hit unless you're doing like upright rows or completely vertical pressing. So there's a much more narrow window of when they are actually being used. And therefore, I think that having some sort of lateral raise of some sort included in your program, ideally pretty frequently, is in your best interest. Anyway, enough talking. I'm sticking to the same weight as last time. Waiting for it to get easier, but this is a tough one to progress on for sure. Okay, other side. You know what? Talk about specificity being in action. This is my most used exercise in my MyoMax training program because I use it on both accessory days, and for most of the other exercises, I'm only hitting it at least or once a week instead of twice. So this one is very, very heavily used. And you know what? The specificity type of strength gain has been pretty good because like I was just alluding to, a muscle group like this or a movement like this that's so isolated. I mean, you're not using any tricep, you're not using any lat, you're not using any chest, not any back. It's just the side delt, and it's a very small muscle. It's hard to load up, and it's hard to get stronger at versus like compound lifts are so much easier, like a bench press, so much easier to get stronger at because you have so much more muscle mass you're using. So there's so much more involved. However, I've definitely gone up substantially. I mean, I think beginning of the program, I was doing 12.5 or 7.5, or maybe it was like 11 or something like that. So it was way less. And of course, that doesn't sound like a lot, like a big increase, but it is. It's just a different scale than something like a back squat. Oh, I'll take that. I went up by a rep. Last time I only got 8s on that exercise. So there you go. That's another win in the books. And at this point in the program, I'll take the small wins. You know, the small wins are actually big now, you know, because the large wins where I'm at 10, 20 pounds, I think that's behind me, at least for this program. because now I've kind of hit my groove with everything. My CNS is adapted. Everything's adapted to the program. I'm not getting as sore. I think that's a great indicator, by the way, of knowing if you're like adapted to something is, are you still getting DOMs? Are you still like feeling that delayed onset muscle soreness? If you're not feeling it as much and you're just kind of feeling like a little bit of fatigue, then your body is probably adjusted to the program. And that doesn't mean that you should swap it out or anything. It's just a good sign in my regard that you should keep on going. You know what I see all the time that honestly really upsets me? It's when people are doing these outrageously goofy lifts. And, you know, obviously there's no benefit behind these crazy lifts. They're only doing it for views and likes and shares and, you know, like social media clout and all that stuff. They're just trying to stir the pot and kind of like bring some abstract thought into their lifting, which, you know, if you're not harming anybody, is totally fine. But half of these lifts look like if they do one small mistake, then they could die, which is just a terrible thing to put yourself through. But it's also a terrible thing to show others, because some people may be like, oh, this lift looks great. Some people who are more naive and just starting out into lifting because they don't know as much, and they may end up trying it out and then hurting themselves and then just ruining their futures in the long run. So I think that the stuff that have been being used forever, you know, the tried and true, the basics, just stick to that. Don't go and do anything that's super crazy unless there's a lot of thought and explanation behind why it works. And obviously that's all like accurate stuff. You know, you don't need to be like squatting with like 2 people on the bar. And that's like an outrageous example, but that's the type of stuff that I'm seeing all the time, and it kind of like grinds my gears a little bit, because the people don't actually do that. That's not how they build their physiques. That's not how they build their strength. They're just doing it to get that shock value. It drives me crazy. Let me know if you guys are the same, or you feel the same way. You know what you're gonna say, I'm using a little bit too much body language while performing the side lateral raise, because this movement is supposed to be more of a strict movement. And honestly, like the more you move, the more momentum you're gonna be using, the more other body parts are gonna be assisting. So the less movement, the better. However, it's heavy. I'll try and work on it. Let me just say this, I'm not gonna be increasing the weight until I'm happy with the form. Oh, hell yeah, I got 10 there. That kind of brings up the idea of sometimes you gotta like slowly work your way into a given movement pattern. Sometimes you're not gonna be super strong off the bat, even if on paper you're warmed up. You know, sometimes you gotta like oil the engine, you know, lubricate the parts. If you think of your body as like a machine, you gotta get it moving and get it warm and all of that stuff in order to be able to perform your best. And that it kind of like holds true. This type of thinking kind of holds true with the bilateral cable push-down that I just did, because the first set, well, it felt good, I only got 9, versus the second set, I ended up getting 10. And it was like the same RPE, the same rate of perceived exertion. So, you know, I'll take it. All right, guys, let's just crush the third set, shall we? Ooh, that's a burn for sure. Whew. All right, let's try and get 10 again. That'd be amazing. Put a little form tidbit with this that I just thought about. Some people, they do just grip it as a whole like this with their thumbs under it. I actually prefer to flip my thumbs on top with the rest of my fingers so that I'm more like this when I'm doing the lift. And for whatever reason, that helps me just key into my tricep. And I think I know the reason why. I think that the reason why is because when you have your whole fist on it like this, then you're gonna be adding in some more forearm since you're gripping the whole bar pretty hard. But by removing that thumb and doing a thumbless grip, then all of a sudden, you're not using your forearms to as large of a degree. And by not using them, you're shifting more of the emphasis from your forearms onto your triceps. And with a movement like this, like in a compound lift, like a bench press, you want more of a stability component. But with this, since it's an isolation lift, I want to be getting that tricep activated as much as possible. Just a little thing that I notice that I do every time. And I didn't always do it that way. Let me say that. Oh yeah, guys, I'll take it. That's 10 again. You know, a lot of people, as they're approaching the end of a given exercise, especially when it gets challenging, they start to like rush it in terms of their tempo. Their tempo goes a lot quicker than it was in the beginning portion of the exercise. And in my opinion, that's the wrong way to be approaching it. And you should try everything you can to prevent that from happening. And I know that I'm kind of being a hypocrite in this regard, because I used to do that all the time. In fact, I still do sometimes, especially if I'm having like a bad or off day. I tend to kind of rush through it towards the end. Maybe sometimes even the whole set. Like yesterday when I did the leg day, and I was so sleep deprived and everything. But I think that more often than not, you should be aiming for getting your reps perfect. So each and every rep is as perfect as you can make it, instead of focusing on the set as a whole, like something that you've got to blast through or get through or check, like, you know, dot your I's and cross your T's type of deal. You should be looking at it as, let's create as many perfect reps as I can until I can't create any more perfect reps in a set. All right, folks, we're sticking to the cable machine. We're changing up the lift quite substantially. We're not doing any more shoulders. That's going to do it for the shoulders for today, I believe, actually. And instead we're going to be doing some more triceps and, you know, the introduction to biceps before we have to get back into, we're going to have to circle back around and do those incline bicep curls, obviously, because we can't be missing those. They're too good. However, we're going to be doing some bilateral cable curls now. You know what? I think I'm going to start with that. Somebody was saying if you stand back further, then, you know, your hips don't get in the way, which, you know, sounds good on paper. And you know what? That may actually work pretty good. But I just liked having that full extension and getting that full stretch down at the bottom. But honestly, even if I'm out here, I'm still getting the stretch. The only way that the stretch is really improved is if you have your arm way back behind your body. So, you know, I think I'm going to try that. And then, you know, some people, they bring it through their legs and then do it this way. And I get the appeal of that because the cable is pulling from underneath you. So it's forcing you to fully extend. However, that always felt so uncomfortable to me. So I'm going to try doing it by stepping back like this. Just making sure that I'm flexing my tricep at the bottom of each rep. Jeez, I think it's the bar actually. I think that's the reason why I'm not liking this exercise. I'm gonna swap to this one. So basically how I'm approaching this logic here is, this is the bar that I just used. Well, this is a great bar. There's no rotation that occurs. So as I'm having to rotate the bar, it's actually being like moved in my hand. It's creating friction, which is very unpleasant. But I'm thinking if I swap to this bar, see how this rotates along the axis. I think that this would be ideal because then when I'm curling, the bar is actually rotating with me. And it's not, there's not that friction component and the unpleasant feeling in the movement. And I think that it may end up helping me in the long run. So, you know, I encourage you guys to dissect your training, but dissect it all the way down to the level of even attachments on a given lift and where you set up the attachments and everything. For instance, I'm about to start the unilateral standing cable overhead tricep extension like this. And instead of having the cable all the way down on the bottom like I did with the lateral raises, I raised it up a bit so that I wouldn't have to waste energy by grabbing it all the way down here and then pulling it up. And then, you know, when I'm lowering it, it would be a pain in the ass. So just by making this little fix, I'm saving myself some effort that I can better expend towards the actual exercise. Same holds true with like using rope attachment versus the cable. You know, rope attachment versus like a bar. A bar, you get more stability, but a rope attachment is great since you can, like, you have more freedom to move the actual rope. Anyway, I'm thinking the same way on this. I actually did increase it on the bicep curl. Damn. I think I may have been able to get 8, but probably 9. Because I got 8 last time, and I just got it again, which is okay. I mean, I'm not too upset about it. I think that those repetitions were solid. I made sure that I got that deep stretch at the bottom. I made sure that I contracted my triceps at the top, so it's all good. Honestly, if I'm dissecting my own form to a large degree, then you'll realize, or I'll realize that I tend to start every single new exercise with my right arm or right leg, and I tend to stick to that for the whole workout. like if I start a set, like I'll start it or start an exercise, all the sets, I begin it with my right arm when it's unilateral left, or my right leg when it's unilateral left. And while I don't think that that does very much damage, I think that over the course of a lifetime, it could like present some imbalances, which you may want to avoid. So just something to think about. I've noticed this before and I never actually changed it because I never catch myself. Wow, I just got 10 right there. Which, you know, I'm happy with it, honestly, because you shouldn't just be matching reps between limbs, you know, because then you're not hitting failure. You're going to be achieving way more volume and way more stimulus on one arm or one leg versus the other one if you're just matching repetitions when one could have gone beyond. So I think that you should just be hitting the same RPE, not the same reps, rate of perceived exertion. However challenging it was on one arm, make it as challenging on the other arm and not just match reps. All right, guys, let's see if my hunch was correct regarding changing up the bar. Oh yeah. Right there, I instantaneously got 2 more reps than last time just by changing up the bar. And I don't even think that that's like the most ideal bar possible. Ideally, it could be an easy bar that rotates, but I don't think my gym has that. Just so that my wrists are in a more comfortable position. Anyway. I'm gonna stick to my right arm for starting this because clearly my left is stronger. Actually, wait, that doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna have to start with my left actually if I'm using that thinking. Dang, so I only got 8 there, and I believe the reason is because I don't think I rested long enough. I think that if you are gonna rotate limbs, like which limb starts on a unilateral lift like this, then ideally you should be accounting for that and making sure that you're resting long enough in between sets so that you can bring forth the most intensity and effort that you should be, or that you possibly can. So when I rotate, you know, I'm obviously finishing with the arm that I'm gonna be starting with next set. So you gotta take that into account and probably rest a little bit longer. Alternatively, you could start with the same arm for the whole lift, and then the next time you hit that given lift, like the next week or whatever, you could rotate. And I think that may actually be the best option. I have one more exercise for, or sorry, I misspoke. I only have one more set for this exercise. Let's get it out of the way. And by get it out of the way, I mean, let's do it to the best of my ability, and finish it. There's 10 again. And it shows that it wasn't just a fluke. Let's start with left again. You guys see me like hyperextend at the top. It's because I'm double jointed my elbow joint. And I think that when you're born this way, it's not a bad thing to hyperextend a little bit. If you're not, then obviously there's a huge problem, and you're probably gonna snap your shit up. But I think that if you're double jointed like me in your elbows or your legs or whatever, I'll just be a little bit more careful about locking out on certain exercises on this. It's totally fine because the isolation lift, it's not like I'm doing 200 pounds, 400 pounds, 300 pounds. But if I'm doing like bench press, I don't lock out and hyperextend at the top. I just go right here, which is pretty close to my full range of motion anyway. All right, let's get into the incline bicep curl, shall we? The incline bicep curl is one of those lifts that it's so flippin' challenging. It's so hard to get stronger at. I mean, any bicep movement at all is hard to get stronger at, but especially this one, it's just so damn hard. And I think it's because of how you're targeting your biceps. You know, if your arm is like out in front of you, it feels a lot easier to manage the weight versus when you have this instability component with your humerus. You know, like you're in space, plus you're stretching behind your body where you really can't be using any other muscles. It just makes it magnitudes more challenging than something like a machine preacher curl or something where it's very fixed and you have like very good leverage. So, you know, I think the key takeaway and what I'm trying to say with this whole little monologue is that be patient. Be patient with your progress on certain lifts because they're not going to come as easily as others for sure. And especially if it doesn't feel super great to your individualized anatomy, try sticking with it and see if someday it clicks. Because, you know, here's an example. For the longest time, squats didn't click for me. They still don't. I mean, they click now, but I just don't love them that much. I think that's just personal preference, but they used to be so challenging where my biomechanics, my individualized anatomy just didn't want to squat well versus like my classmates. This is back in high school. My classmates, like a lot of them could go ass to grass, just easy, no problem, engage your legs perfectly, you know, all that jazz. It took me a few years. Anyway, just an example. Let's get into the first set of 3. Again, I'm doing bilateral. Doing bilateral and then swapping to unilateral once it gets really hard. Ooh, that's tough. I'm about to do some wrist curls as well. And oh, I said last time that I was going to go down and wait for wrist curls. Let me grab an easier weight. I almost forgot about that. I'm literally halving it now. Just so that, because, you know, it goes back to like what I was saying about lateral raises, you know. It's such a small muscle group and stuff that you really can't be doing a lot of weight, and nor should you. And I think that forms are the same way. You want to kind of be milking it with higher rep sets, because who maxes out on lateral or forearm work? Okay, there you go. There you have it, guys. Set number 1 down. Something that I'd like to briefly discuss that I see all the time. A lot of people, when they're doing their form on an incline bicep curl, or just honestly any dumbbell curl of any sort, at the bottom, their wrist is neutral, so it's like a hammer curl. And then as they bring it up, they're rotating and supinating their arm until they're like fully like this, to where their wrist is almost facing their pecs, their inner wrist. And while I think that is great form, if you want to be isolating the bicep as much as possible, then you want to keep your wrist supinated the whole time. So just like this. Because when you're rotating your wrist, then you're involving more brachialis, which is the deep muscle in the arm where you can't see it. Of course, it's great to build that extra muscle as well, but if you're trying to get the most out of your biceps in a curl, then you want to keep it supinated the whole time. And of course, you can do that like internal rotation at the top to further contract the bicep, where you know your wrist is like facing your chest, facing towards you. Of course, you could do that, which is great, but you want to keep it supinated the whole time if you just want to put focus on the bicep. And if you want to take that a step further, you could extend the wrist like this, because then that takes the forearms out of it as well. So then you're just getting bicep, just getting in there. But obviously, it depends on your goals, you know? If you want to get more brachialis, then keep it neutral the whole time, like this. You know, because then you'll be getting more of that. Then of course, you're still gonna be working the bicep because you're still doing a curl, but you're gonna be working it to a lesser degree. So you just gotta kind of play around with that yourself. I see a lot of people going from neutral to supination to like internal rotation, like that. And I think that they just do it because it feels good, and they don't actually recognize the how and the why, and you know the implications. Set 2. Ooh. Okay. You'll notice there, when I'm cranking out those unilateral reps, I am keeping my wrist neutral the whole time, because it's easier. When you're involving your brachialis as well as your bicep, it makes the movement easier when you're doing a hammer crawl. And by the time I'm finished doing those full repetition and I hit failure with the supinated, like really heavily emphasized bicep exercise, I don't have much juice left in the tank. I can't squeeze out a full good repetition with that purely emphasized bicep curl, and therefore I swap to hammer crawls because I can. Makes sense to me. Sure, you're noticing that I do wrist curls like this, and then I also do them like this. And there's a reason for that. It's because when you're working this way, you're getting this portion of the forearm. Working this way, you're getting this back portion of the forearm. So in order to adequately hit both, I think you should be doing wrist flexion and extension while you're doing it. In fact, I think there even could be some merit to doing like ulnar deviation and whatnot, like this stuff, you know. That's gonna be working kind of the sides here. But you know, obviously there's not much meat on these like protruding sides of the forearm. So, you know, maybe your time is better spent with just flexion and extension, but that's gonna be up to you, you know. You can, if you feel like you really want big forearms, or maybe they're lagging behind your humerus muscles up here, your biceps and triceps and brachialis, then maybe you want to include some ulnar deviation and stuff like that. Okay, I was just gonna cut to set 3, but I think that I'm actually good to go. You know, like while I'm doing those the wrist flexion and extension, the wrist curls and stuff, my biceps are resting to a large degree. So I think I'm good to go. Let's get it. Okay. One, two, 3. My form's pretty sloppy there, which is a little regretful, but honestly, when you were going beyond failure like that, try going beyond failure like that and tell me that your form is pitch perfect, because I think it may be impossible to crank out reps without a little bit of leeway in there. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for week 4. This is concluding week 4, day 6, and I'm honestly super apprehensive because week 5 is gonna be a bitch. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, this program is increasing volume each and every week on key exercises, but for week 5, this is gonna be the first week. Week 5 will be the first week where I increase the 2 really heavy compound lifts are in the beginning of the exercise. So we're going from 3 sets on, you know, the squats and the RDLs and the pressing and the pulling, and to 4. And just by having that 1 extra set, it's gonna create a whole layer of more complexity and difficulty recovering. So everything is gonna have to be on point moving forward. Luckily, I'm in a pretty big surplus now. I'm just gonna keep increasing my food intake and my recovery and all that stuff. So it should all work out. But anyway, that's gonna do it for week 4, day 6. I'll catch you on Monday for week 5, day 1. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.